Good afternoon. My name is Barry Kennedy, and this is my video recording for video discussion board number 1 for HIUS 713. In the period after the American Civil War, there was great growth in terms of American industry. And one of the key aspects of this growth of American industry was the expansion of the railroad. Thousands and thousands of miles of railroad was laid across the United States, connecting previous railroads and also expanding westward and connecting to the eastern part of the United States. A great portion of this work was completed by Chinese immigrants. One of these Chinese immigrants was a man by the name of Li Chu. Li Chu left China in the late 1870s and arrived in San Francisco in 1880. Interestingly enough, he had very little money, and he literally had to agree to something along the lines of an indentured servants agreement to be able to come to the United States. One of the things that he writes about is how he was treated in his time while working on the railroad. He spoke of himself and other Chinese men being beaten, being fed very little coarse food, only allowed to take very few water breaks during the day, that it was common that men passed out from heat exhaustion and from fatigue. The clothes on their backs became almost like rags. And while all this was going on, the horrible working conditions, these Chinese immigrants like Li Chu had to encounter racist slurs being constantly hurled at them. They were treated not as second-class citizens or second-rate citizens. They were treated as one might treat a cruel animal, which was horrific. Over the next 10 years, Li Chu will continue to work in the railroad and in other industries, including laundry services and others. And everywhere he went, he documented this racist treatment and how poorly the Chinese were treated and viewed by not just Americans, but also other immigrants. In 1890, he moved to Buffalo, New York, and started a business of his own. However, he quickly encountered a very hostile community that had no desire for him to be there. So he moved to New York City. When he moved to New York City, he set up a shop in Chinatown. He sold teas, porcelain, and a variety of other what some might call Chinese knickknacks or whatnots. And he ended up living a very successful life in New York City. But in all of this, he still documents the problems that not only the Chinese, but other groups like the Irish had in terms of trying to find employment. And he said that there was a great jealousy amongst the different groups in terms of trying to get jobs. This jealousy was like a rivalry that sometimes became violent. He wrote again during his time on the railroad of himself and others being beaten, being mistreated. And the same thing happened when he was in Buffalo. The same thing happened when he was in New York. So needless to say, one of the very important aspects of industrialization was the workers that industry was built upon their backs. Individuals like Li Chu and millions of others who were treated poorly, who honestly, they were viewed like slaves. They were viewed as if they were really not people. But they still worked. They contributed to American society. It's a really sad story that Mr. Chu and millions others encountered this type of treatment. I hope you found this informative, and I hope you have a great and wonderful day.